we have been able to denote the difference between things happening to us and reaction and response, because ultimately, like, things aren't just happening to you. I want to talk today about the difference between responding and reacting. I read a really beautiful book by an author, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Wow, like it's almost like it's painful to endure that book because of what that man went through. He was a psychotherapist, or like a psychologist, who a Jewish psychologist who was placed into the camps back in like the Nazi days. And holy fuck, like, you know what I mean? Some graphic and very painful things to interpret and understand in there, but it's a part of our history. And as long as you don't allow it to affect your paradigm or change your state in any way, it's definitely something that you should interpret, because the messages within that book are so powerful. But one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that book was there's a moment between stimulus and response, or stimulus and reaction. So meaning stimulus being something happening, and then your response or your reaction, you know what I mean, being, if you're reacting, it's like it's unconscious, like you're reacting to it. And then if you're responding, it's a conscious, like you're making a conscious decision to respond to it in a certain way. And the space between stimulus and response can be a millisecond, but ultimately, you know what I mean, we do have control over whether we are choosing to react or respond. Very powerful. So reacting, like I said, is more like, you know what I mean, like an autopilot, like a trigger, something that you do unconsciously. Response is your choice. So if you're responding to something, you're actually making a conscious decision in how you choose to respond to it. Now, like, you can respond in a positive manner, you can choose to respond in a negative manner, just because, you know what I mean, reaction and response don't actually have any correlative nature to positive or negative. Like, you can choose to respond in a negative way, you can choose to respond in a positive way. But the divinity of it all is, like, ultimately, if you can get control of yourself, you can choose to respond in however manner you decide to respond. But if you're just reacting, which a lot of people, that's the whole premise of their existence. They're just literally just things happening, and they're just having things happen to them and reacting to them all unconsciously. And like, these are the victims of the world. These are the people that they just think that life is happening to them. This couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, you know what I mean? They're the only thing different between our biological makeups, between a horse and a pig and a human, is our intellect, our ability to make decisions, our ability to forecast. And, you know what I mean? Won't get too much farther into that, but like, it's ultimately our consciousness, like our ability to consciously navigate through decisions. So, you know what I mean, the people that are ultimately probably winning in life, they have figured out how to respond. They're not just reacting. They're not some victim's paradigm where they think that things are just happening to them, and things are happening and they're reacting, and it's just all unconscious. Honestly, things are happening to you 99% of the time. Some things are ultimately out of your control, but your perception of them puts you back in that control. But you know what I mean, the most of us, like the 1%ers, we have been able to denote the difference between things happening to us and reaction and response, because ultimately, like, things aren't just happening to you. Like, they're a cascade of a decision over time. It may be a decision that you made 6 months ago that has brought in, you know what I mean, a happenstance or something, a circumstance, whatever that's going on. But you, irregardless of whether you allowed it to consciously happen, or if it's something that you feel is just happening to you, you ultimately have the choice to make the response. You don't have to react. You can step back. You ever, you know what I mean? Take a deep breath, count to 10. Like that is creating a gap between the stimulus and your response rather than just reacting. So like you need to be able to consciously make that decision. Like, are you just reacting to things or are you consciously responding to them? Like that is a powerful person. The person who has been able to denote the difference and is now consciously making decisions and responding to things in a way of their design and of their choice based off of their perception of whatever the stimulus was, whatever the circumstance was. That's a powerful person. I think too many people are just floating through life thinking that things are just happening to them and then unconsciously reacting to them as a result. I really feel for those people. And they're not all the way gone, they're not all the way lost. They can always be awoken, you know what I mean? You can awaken those people by, you know what I mean, making them conscious of this. Like a lot of people, I just finished a book. Well, it's not exactly a book. It's more of like a synopsis and an interview with Bob Proctor relative to a seminar and a program that he has, Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. And I'm trying to remember what I was going to say now, but it's like a lot of people, you know what I mean? Even if they're having success, like it doesn't mean that they're necessarily conscious of it. He said it in a way that it's like they're conscious, unconscious competence, meaning like they are competent, like they're doing well. They're just not exactly conscious of the processes in which play into that. It's unconscious competence. So not everybody that you see is doing well financially in their relationships, whatever it may be in their own development. They may not actually be fully conscious of the systems and what it is that plays into all of that. And that's unconscious competence. But I think that once you can become conscious of your competence and you are building it by design, you can really begin to understand that gap between the stimulus and the response and stop just reacting to things. Like there's, you know what I mean? There's always going to be triggers, you know what I mean? Not everybody's perfect. There's always going to be things that trigger reactions from you. But the more conscious you are of it, the more that you can get conscious of the implementation of giving an accurate response to that situation rather than just constantly reacting to it. And just because, you know what I mean, you've been reacting to certain things and certain stimulus throughout your journey thus far doesn't mean that you can't now become conscious of it and start understanding that there is that gap, even if it's a millisecond, between the stimulus, like the thing happening, and your response to it. You don't merely have to be reacting. So I think that this is a very powerful point, something to really start to understand and something to develop on in your mind even further. But I just wanted to make you aware, because it all really starts with awareness, that just because something's happening doesn't mean that you have to be reacting. It can happen, and then there's that, you know what I mean, that's the stimulus, and then there's that gap where it could even be a millisecond, like I said, but you can choose to respond. And that's true freedom, and that's true power. Don't be reacting, be responding. Now let's grow together.